Well, good morning, everyone. It's May 6th, 2017. It's Bruce Firestone here, and we're going to do a little bit of work this morning on spreadsheets. What kind of spreadsheets do you use when you're trying to analyze investment property? And I'm going to do a little bit of a case study here based on 3 Splinter Crescent, which is a small double. You can see it here on the top right hand of my screen. If my cursor is moving, you'll see. It's a double, close to shopping, close to transit, quite bikeable, decent walk score, and it happens to belong to my middle daughter, Mimi, who you can see here. So last year she became the proud owner of this property. So as I said, it's a double. It's 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms upstairs. And what we liked about it, if I can just go down here, scroll down here, is that as you walk down to the backyard, it had a walkout condition. So what we did with it, if you can follow what I'm doing here, is we renovated the lower level. So now we're on the inside looking out. Here's the front door. There's a large window, a bit of a cupboard here. This is kind of the living area. Here's the kitchen that we installed. It is a 1 bedroom, and our tenant, or Mimi's tenant, liked green, so we painted it green. And because the bedroom is quite small and it's only a 1 bedroom, my wife and Miriam pulled the cupboard out, and so it's kind of in the hallway. So here you have the bedroom, there's the cupboard, and over here is the bathroom. So it's quite a nice bathroom they put in, and it has its own laundry facility. So it's got its own separate entrance, it's got its own separate laundry facility, it's got its own little parking space, so it's all good. Mimi bought this last year for $345,000. And before we do any kind of investment, whether it's a double like this, a townhouse, a single family home, a 10-unit apartment building, or for that matter, a commercial, little shopping plaza, we do the same kind of analysis. And so you should have, to make good decisions in life, I found you have to have 3 things in alignment: your head, your heart, and your gut. Your head, yeah, right, that's responsible for doing analysis. Your heart, you want to be passionate about what you do, and your gut, your instincts have to sort of be in alignment and say, yeah, this is a good thing to do. So let's just walk through this case study. So Miriam purchased the property for $345,000, and in Ontario you have to pay something called land transfer tax. Here it's about $3,600. She had some legal fees, including title insurance, which gives you some protection in case there's a future issue with your title and other conditions. And she had some other miscellaneous closing costs of $885. So all of this is in Canadian dollars. So her total cost for buying this property was around $350,000, almost $351,000. And she renovated the upstairs, didn't have to do much to the upstairs, but did quite a substantial renovation downstairs, about $75,000. And believe it or not, this building actually, I don't know how they ever got an occupancy permit for it, but they actually had a door from, actually, if you can see my cursor again, from this kind of area here, and it, it leads to the outside. It's about 8 feet suspended air, and they never put a deck in, so Mimi has to put in a deck. So her total cost for renovating this place and buying it was around $447,000. It was appraised at $430,000, and it would have been better for Mimi, really, as a first-time home buyer, if it had been appraised at 447, but it didn't come in that high, and so it came in about $17,000 below cost, about 4% less. All right, and you'll see as we go through this analysis that does make a difference. All right, so now let's look at her income side. One of the things I tell people to do, if they're real estate investor types, is to treat their own principal residence as if it was a rental. In other words, Mimi has to pay rent to herself. Think about that. She has to live somewhere. So if she lived in a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, double like this with a single car garage, she'd probably be paying about $2,000 a month in Ottawa in rent. And then we added things like cost. What does she pay for her tech package, her multimedia package? So that's Netflix, Spotify, basic cable, obviously internet and Wi-Fi, and some other things as well. So it comes in about $145. This one is interesting. She has a couple of sheds on the property, and she actually rents them, one to her tenant and one to herself. And of course, you have to pay your utilities. Nobody really likes to pay utilities. I call them utes here. That's because I lived in Australia for 7 years, and the Aussies called them utes. So you have to pay your utilities, and then she did a lease with a very nice young couple downstairs. She got $1,230, which included a tech package. And then the tenants needed a little extra space for, I don't know, storing their snowboards or whatever, so she rented the second shed to them for $85. So her total revenues on this building are about $3,700 a month, which is not bad. And if she moved out, you can think of it this way: if she moved out and rented to somebody else, that's where she would be. All right. Now, property taxes in Ottawa are actually pretty expensive. It may surprise people to learn that property taxes in Ottawa on residential property are actually higher than Toronto. Toronto is a much bigger city, and I would have thought they would have been higher because bigger cities tend to be more difficult, more complicated to manage, to operate. But in fact, Ottawa somehow manages to do that. Water heater and water filter, Mimi has those rented, so she pays $62 a month for that. Her water and sewer bills are there, $35. Her hydro, $285. Hydro is Ontario speak and Quebec speak for your electricity. Her insurance of the property, seems a bit high, but that's what she pays. We put in an allowance of about $72 a month for repairs and maintenance. And of course, her tech package, she has to pay something for all the technology brings into the home. And then she has some miscellaneous costs of about $43. So her total costs are about $1,100 a month. And if you look at that as a percentage of income, let's just highlight that and show you how I do that. It comes out to about 30%. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to format that cell with I like 1 decimal point. So that's her share of net operating income, or sorry, of total income that goes to her operating costs. And that's a bit high. Most properties that I deal with in Ontario are more, and certainly in Eastern Ontario, not Toronto, are more like 24 or 25%. So Mimi's up closer to 30%, so it's a bit higher. Now, her net operating income, that's what NOI stands for. I'll just put that in there for you. Yeah, I got it right. Is around $2,600 a month. This is an important number for you to know. Whether it's a commercial property or residential property, it's a very basic number. What, after paying all of your costs, not your financing, but all of your other costs, what are you left with on a monthly basis? In this case, it's about $2,600, and that works out to $31,270. PA stands for per annum. So you remember she bought the property, renovated it, and her cost, including everything, is around $447,000, which gives her a cap rate, I'm going to highlight this for you, of her net operating income divided by her property cost, all right? Or its fair market value, or what we hope is the fair market value. And this turns out to be 7%. The way I went from this to the number is I'm hitting the enter key, so that's how I got the 7%. Now, you've heard me talk about cap rates before. If you've listened to any of my videos, a cap rate stands for capitalization rate, and it's really an ROI, a return on investment. And the simplest way to think about it is this. I find this the most successful way to explain it. It is the most fundamental measure of cash flow in the real estate business. And I think Warren Buffett, if he were on this video, wouldn't that be cool, would agree that cash is, in fact, one of the most important things that you can measure. So, if you were a rich dude or dudess, I don't know if that's a word, but a rich fellow or woman, you could put your if you had $447,000 in cash just sitting in your bank, you would probably get today about 1.7% on that money. But if you bought this house at 3 Splinter, you'd get 7%. So skill testing question, what's better, right? So if you put your money at 1.7% in the bank, what would you get? Well, it would be 447,000 multiplied by 1.7%. I'm going to hit the enter key here. So you would get this amount per annum, right? $7,600 per annum. But instead, you decided to put it into 3 Splinter and you got 31,000. So I guess I might as well highlight that for you. So again, skill testing question. What's better? Would you like to get $31,000 a year or $7,600 a year? Well, we know the answer. All right. So let's just keep going and look at our mortgage. All right. So what is our mortgage? Our mortgage is 80%. We got an 80%. Mimi got an 80% loan to value. So LTV, that stands for loan to value, approved by her lender, her financial institution. But it's 80%. If you highlight this, it's 80% of the appraised value. Oops, did I go by it? Maybe I did. No. Yeah, here's the appraised value. So she got 80% of the appraised value. You know, it wouldn't have been nice if she got 80% of her actual cost, because that was a little higher and it would have made it a little easier on this young woman. But no, lenders like to appoint their own appraisers, and so she got a mortgage of $344,000 at 3% with a 25-year amortization period. So how do you figure out that number? All right, let's see. I hit the equals key. So as soon as you hit the equals key, notice what happens up here, right? Up here on the top left hand of the screen. So I'm going to take that away again. Oops, I'll backspace it. I'll go back in here. I hit the equals key, and sure enough, it shows me that there are a bunch of functions here, all kinds of different cool things that you can get. There's, Excel has a lot of these. So if I click on that, as I just did, it's asking me for what is the rate on the mortgage. So that's the rate. See how it appeared over here? And how many periods? We're amortizing it over 25 years. What's the present value? Well, her mortgage starts off at $344,000, and of course she's going to pay it off over 25 years. So it goes down to 0. The future value was 0. And I got to put a 0 in here because that means it's a Canadian style loan. If it was an American style loan, you would put 1 in here. It would give you an American number, and I'll put in Canada. All right. So I'll hit the OK button. And that's what you have. You have $19,755 a year that she's paying principal and interest to her lender. Now, what is that per month? Well, we simply divide by 12 and we get that. So, hey, I did it right. So I'll highlight that, I guess in orange for some reason. So she's paying about $1,600 a month on her mortgage. So her actual cash flow after paying her mortgage is this number. So what we did was she's got net operating income from her building of $2,600. She's paying a mortgage of that. I hit the enter key. She's making about $950 a month, or about $11,000 a year is her cash flow after paying her mortgage. So remember, the cap rate measures it before you pay your mortgage, and of course your cash flow after you pay your mortgage will be less if you have a mortgage, and she certainly does. Now let's look at Mimi's actual cost, all right? All right, let's go back here, Mimi's actual cost. So she actually has a roommate, one of whom is her sister, a second roommate, and they pay $675 each. And so when you actually look at what it cost Miriam to live in her own house with a tenant in the lower level, completely separated legal apartment, and 2 roommates, she's actually at, that's a plus sign. She's actually at $170 a month. In other words, it's a negative cost. In other words, she makes a little bit of money by living in her own place. Now, try that as a tenant, right? All right. That's why I believe that home ownership is very important. I have 5 kids. I encourage them all to do that. Okay, so Mimi's living in her own place for 170. But what if she only had? Oops, it's not responding. I hope I don't lose my computer here. What if she only had 1 roommate? Let's just change that to that. So Mimi's cost, so it would be $845. So she's actually not living for a negative amount of money. I screwed up and I apologize, all right? So let's go back and say she does have a roommate. So her cost, out-of-pocket cost is $170. So she would have to charge her roommates more. Say she could get $775 instead. Oops, I guess I should have put a negative sign here. Then she would be living for a negative amount of money. But, it is her sister and her friend, so that's where she's at. So she is spending some money to live in her own house. But she was renting before at $1,000 a month, Now she's in her own home, which she owns. So she's doing pretty well. All right, what does PPMT stand for? PPMT stands for the principal that you pay. You remember she's paying quite a bit of money every year on her mortgage. What was it? Per year it would be this number times 12. Uh, let's make that a dollar number. So she would be paying about almost $20,000 in mortgage payments per annum, right? But some of that goes to interest and some of that goes to principal. So how much goes to principal? All right, let's figure that out. So I know the number, but we're going to show you how to do that. All right, so you hit the equal sign again, and you go up here, and you look under this tab, and you find, oh, look at that, PPMT. So again, what is the rate? It's 3%. Period, it's your first year. The number of periods you have, remember she's amortizing it over 25. It starts at $344,000. She's paying it down to 0. So she will pay $9,400 off her mortgage in her first year. What about the second year? Well, we just do it again. What's the rate? 3%. Period is year number 2. Number of periods 25. Present value 344. Future value 0. Oh, and look at that. So what this is telling you is that every year Mimi pays her mortgage. Some of that is going as principal, some of it's going as interest. This is the amount that's being paid off. And think about that. Her roommates and her tenants are helping her pay her mortgage. Who gets the benefit of that? The mortgage is getting paid down. Who benefits, the tenant or the landlord? Well, obviously the landlord, Miriam, right? So it's paid by the tenant, or largely by the tenants, or tenants in this case. And who gets the benefit? That would be Mimi. And so you keep going. And you notice how the amount of principal that you're paying off every year goes up, and the amount of interest you pay every year goes down. Look at this. So she's paying, her total mortgage is this, and we subtract this. So that's the amount of interest that Mimi is paying every year. And you'll notice that if we go back here and try it again, yay. So the amount of interest that Miriam is paying every year goes down a little bit, and the amount of principal that she's paying every year goes up a little bit, right? That's good news. So if you have a mortgage with a 5-year amortization term, 25-year amortization, a 5-year term, over that period of time, you're gonna pay off $50,000 from your mortgage. And I call that something called forced savings. You're kind of forced to save it. Now, it's true, as my wife would say, that's not necessarily money that you can touch, feel, and spend, but it does go to the benefit of the landlord, of the owner, right? So there's $50,000 that Mimi will be forced to save over 5 years, and it is a benefit to her, even if it's not cash in her jeans, right? So let's look at that. So all I did here was I averaged the $50,000 of principal that's paid off over the first 5 years of this mortgage, and I hit the enter key again, about $10,000 a year is being paid off, the principal of her mortgage. Who gets the benefit of that? Well, we already know the answer is Miriam. And if you look at the total value of this property, the total cost was about $447,000. So this represents, if you look at these numbers, about, hit the enter key, a 2.2% per annum return. Is that really the ROI, the additional return on investment from principal paydown? Not really, because her equity, the amount of equity she had to come up with to buy this building was $103,000. Now you might be asking how she got that equity. Well, this was a 50-50 deal between my daughter Mimi and me. And Mimi put in $5,000 and her dad put in $95,000 approximately. And of course Mimi said, well, it's still 50-50, right, Dad? I said, absolutely. So if you have kids, you'll understand that story. So really though, this $10,000 a year of principal pay down is not a return on investment on the whole cost of the house. It's on whatever the equity was. So it's really about 9.7% a year. So you take that $10,000 and you divide it by the equity invested. So you've got about another 10% return, right? So if you remember that cap rate, that's your cash flow. In addition to that, you paid off your principal, and that's added about another 10%. So now you're doing pretty well. Now, inflation in Ottawa and housing in the last few years has usually been anywhere from 1 to 3%. But in the last short while, last year or two, it started to accelerate, and it's gone from 1, 2, or 3% to 4 or 5%. And we're kind of on a track to follow Toronto, which is really crazy. It's been like 30% 2016, 2017. But I put in the 4% number. So here's again the property cost to Mimi. And the property value after 5 years, if inflation is 4%, will be about $543,000. How did I get that? Let's see if we can calculate that together. All right. So you take $447,000. You multiply it by, and I have to put a bracket in here, 1, if you're looking at the top of the screen, you'll see it, 1 plus the 4%. And then there's a little hat on your screen. And if you're looking at Excel, you can see the hat, it just appeared. I'll make it disappear and reappear. And that gives you the exponent. And we're talking about 5 years. That's your exponent. So yeah, yay me. So that gets you the number. So the value of this property after 5 years should be in the range of around $545,000, which gives her another increase in value of, it's close to 100 grand. That's a lot. The average over 5 years, again, I just divided the increase in value by 5, is about almost $20,000 a year. Again, who gets the benefit? Does it go to the lender, your bank or your mortgage company? No. Does it go to the appraiser? Certainly not. How about your realtor? Well, I'm a realtor. It would be nice if it went to me, but it doesn't. Does it go to your lawyer, your mortgage broker? Do I have any other questions? No, that's it. No, obviously it goes to the owner. It goes to Miriam, right? Again, it's not money you could touch, feel, and spend, but it's your money because it is a real increase in value. So again, if you express that average annual increase in value over the cost, it's around a 4.3% return on investment. But that's not right either. You got to express it as $19,000 a year. I'll put per annum here over the equity that's invested. So that's another 18% return. So if I just simply add up her returns, her cap rate was 7%. Her principal pay down represents another 9.7%. Inflation as a percent of equity was another 18%. So if I just did an arithmetic addition, she's getting like a 35% return. Remember, if you put it in your bank, you might get 1 or 2%. And she's getting 35%. Skill testing question, what's better? Okay, you know the answer. Now, this is approximate, okay? I better put that, highlight that. It's only approximate, okay? It's because it's not truly arithmetic addition that gets you the rate of return. So how do you actually sort of figure that out? What is the real return on investment here over 5 years? You do that through what's called an internal rate of return, sometimes called the IRR. And the internal rate of return, internal rate of return is a little bit more difficult to calculate, and I'll show you how I did it. You can see it on the left-hand side, but I'll actually show you. So equals, how much is her equity? How much money did she and Pop put into this building? Let's see if I can find the original statement of equity. Gosh, it's embarrassing when I can't quite get it. Okay, and you notice I put a negative sign. If you go up here, I put a negative sign in, right? And the reason for that is negative sign means, and the brackets in this case means money that's gone out of your jeans, right? And then how much money comes in every year? Well, you remember that it's the net operating income less your mortgage. So it's this number. That's a positive, right? So there's no brackets here, no negative sign here, because every year, if you own this building or I own this building, I'd be getting about $11,000 a year. So yeah, this is easy. Same thing in year 2, same thing in year 3, same thing in year 4. Now, not in year 5. So what most coaches will tell you to do is to sell your building after 5 years and realize your returns. I don't teach people that. I certainly didn't teach Mimi that. What I teach people to do is rather something more simple and I think more beneficial. You don't sell it, you refinance it, and you pull money out tax-free. So you still have to bound the calculation of internal rate of return. I picked 5 years. It could have been 3 years, it could have been 7 years, it could have been 20 years, I suppose, but I wanted to make it fairly simple for today. And so what you have to do is you have to determine what is the value of this building, not because you sold it, but because you are refinancing it. All right, so how do we figure out what that number is? Well, let's look at this and see how I did it over here. All right, so obviously you can see that to find out how much value you get in year 5, you are making throughout that year, again, $11,515 from cash flow. But there's some other good stuff that's happening. I got to find out where it is, though. Oops, this might be embarrassing, guys. So bear with me while I look for it. I guess I'll have to just read it. So B107. So B107. All right, that we got. D111. All right, so D111. Okay, here it is. All right, so what you have in year 5 is you have the value of the house less the mortgage plus the amount of principal that you returned, and that's how you got this number. So that requires a little bit more explanation. Let's look at this. So this is equal to B79. I better follow my own numbers here. Oh, I get lost. All right, so what is the value of the property after 5 years? Okay, let's figure that out. Let's delete that. So how do we figure out the value of this house after 5 years? Well, again, we hit the equal sign. Do I need to do that? No, I don't. Yeah, maybe I do. Okay, equals the cost when she bought it and renovated it times, right? 1 plus, remember we did this before, 4%, right? Hat, the little hat thing, 5 years, right? We did this already. So that's the value after 5 years. Now notice I'm not going to deduct from the value after 5 years any realtor fees or lawyer's fees because you sold it, because in fact you didn't. You simply had another appraisal done for refinancing. So the true value is 543. And you remember your mortgage, right, is equal to B42. So let's see where that is. B42. Under the B, that's the bingo, B42. So that was the mortgage that she originally had. All right. But now I want to go back to B42 because there's something I should have shown you when I looked at it. So her mortgage was 80% loan to value, but unfortunately she only got 80% of, right? If I go like this, 80% of E42, right, and B13. So she only got 80% of this. But what would have happened if she had gotten a better appraisal, right? If she had gotten a better appraisal, it means her mortgage would have been 80% loan to value still, but based on her actual cost. So if she could have convinced her appraiser to give her a better appraisal, she would have got a mortgage of $357, which is means $13,000 more, or almost $14,000. So it means that the amount of equity that Mimi would have had to come up with instead of being $103,000 would have been $90,000, and that would have been easier both for me and for her, but we didn't get that. This tells you how important those appraisals are. And typically, I think if I go a little further here, typically these appraisers are taking instructions not from you, but from your bank. And if you look at that, it's about 3 or 4% below what I think is the true value. So appraisers tend to lag value. They're protecting the bank's interest or the lender's interest, not necessarily your interest or Mimi's interest. All right, that's enough of that. All right, so let's go back down here. All right, so how much value do we have in year 5, at the end of year 5? All right, so we've paid off $50,000 of principal. Remember, we just determined that with the PPMT thing, right? We paid off 50 grand, so we don't owe this amount. So what we actually owe on the mortgage is this minus this, so that's good news. It's gone down. So the amount of value that we have in year 5 is this amount, the $11,500 of cash flow, plus the value of the building, minus what we still owe on the mortgage. So, yay, it came out exactly the same way. Now, how do we find the internal rate of return? The internal rate of return is the rate of return that will exactly make these flow of benefits equal to that. In other words, it's the discount rate that makes the flow of benefits exactly equal to the amount of money that left your jeans at time 0. And the way to think of this discount rate is that the higher the discount rate has to be, the better the project is. That's why it's called internal rate of return. And there's no perfect measure of rates of return. There's nothing that, you would think that there is, but there isn't. But the internal rate of return is probably one of the best. And certainly all the professional analysts in real estate and, of course, in many other endeavors, they use internal rate of return. All right, enough said. So, oops. Uh-oh. You guys are going to have to wait. I'm going to have to tell you a story. Uh, my, my, all right, I'm going to tell a joke. What did one flea say to the other? What did one flea say to the other? Said, shall we walk or take the dog? Okay, enough of that. All right, so let's go back to the equal sign. Now we have to go up and find another function. This is obviously the IRR. And we just highlight this, and then I hold down my shift key and this, so I get this kind of thing happening here on the right hand side. It is asking me for a guess, but you don't have to worry about that, and I put that in here. And again, I like to format cells with one. So it tells me that I'm getting a 27.7% internal rate of return on this project, which is really good. You remember our additive, our simple arithmetic addition gave us 35%. That's not quite accurate. It's not as high as that, but still pretty good. All right, so let's say Mimi took that same $103,000 and she put it in a bank high savings account at 1.7%, right? How much would it be after 5 years? Well, it would have gone up a little bit. It would have gone to $112,000 after 5 years. Puts it into 3 Splinter. She's getting a true internal rate of return of 27, almost 20%. It turns into $349,000. Think about that, almost $350,000. But it's hard to save money. If you could save $100,000, that's fantastic. But it's hard. And let's say you did this 6 times. You bought 6 houses, right? 6. Wow, now you're saving real money. Okay, I'll just get rid of that. Now, my minimum plan, this is Prof Bruce, minimum plan is to own your own home plus 4, 5, or 6 residential rentals. That's what I'm trying to do. If you're hearing a meowing, that's Sammy, my executive assistant. He's also a cat. Residential rentals. So if you had 5 and your own home and you had a total of 6 buildings, and again, 2 units per building, your own place, and a basement apartment, you'd end up with 12 doors, including one that you live in yourself. What happens after 25 years? So Mimi's in her 20s. What happens when she's 50? All right. So the value of each home, if it goes up 4%, will be like 1.1 or 1.2 million, which is huge. She'll have a $7 million portfolio. It should be like a real estate mogul. I'll put that in here. Real estate mogul. Pretty cool, eh? Mogul. Her income from her portfolio will be almost $190,000 per annum, and that's assuming that she doesn't get $1 extra of rental income. If she got 2%, look at that, if she got 2% increase in her rents every year, it would be $307,000. So by the time she's 50, she could have from this portfolio $15,000 a month or even $25,000 a month. These are 2 alternatives here, depending on how much inflation in rents. Can you imagine that? So most people cannot save enough money. How much money would you have to save? Let's just do that. Let's say she gets no rental increases at all in the next 25 years and still ends up with $187,000 per annum. And if she had put that in her bank, right, at 1.7%, how much money would she have had to save, through her job? She works as a server in a restaurant. How much money would she have had to raise to get $187,000 in independent income? Well, that's easy to calculate. Take this, divide it by that. She would have had to raise $11 million or save $11 million bucks to have the same income. That I don't think is possible, right? If I could save $100,000, that's amazing, and probably you're no different than me. So, and if she ended up with this number, right, 307,000, how much, if she gets a little bit of rent, how much would she have had to save? This is just fun stuff. It's fantasy stuff. She would have had to save $18 million in 25 years. Okay, no, that's not going to happen. Now, of course, I've assumed that in the next 25 years she's paying off her mortgage. So if she still has some mortgages that she has to pay off, obviously these numbers will be a little bit less. But you can see how a very small that can pay off in a big way. And especially when you think about that, the average Canada pension plan payout in 2050, $150 a month. Okay, another skill testing question. What would you rather have, $550 a month or $15,000 a month through real estate? Okay, or $25,000. All right, we get that. So how does the refinance strategy actually work? All right, I'll go through this, and I'm almost at an end, so bear with me. I won't take too much longer. So the value of her home, 3 Splinter, after 5 years will be about $540,000. The mortgage, as you know, started off at $344,000. She paid off $50,000 principal. She's going to have about $250,000 of equity. If she gets another 80% loan to value mortgage after 5 years, she'll be able to get $435,000, which means she could pull out $141,000 tax-free. This is not income, it's simply finance. And people have trouble with that. But Warren Buffett has been doing this since he came home from the Korean War in the 1950s. And it's his philosophy applied to real estate. That is tax-free. You don't pay a dime of tax on that, okay? But what if she decided to refinance after 3 years because she wants to build her portfolio faster? She would end up with $87,000 of tax-free, and if she did it after 2 years, she would end up with $62,000. So you need about $100,000 to do a building like this. So she probably should wait, try and save a little bit of money on her own, or maybe come to Pops again for another loan and do it after 3 years. But some of you probably will be a bit more aggressive and be able to refinance every 2 years. You can build a heck of a portfolio in 5 years. And there's some other solutions that I have down below here, but they're a little bit too complicated. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry it took about 35 or 36 minutes to do this, but I hope you enjoyed it. This is the kind of spreadsheet you should do for every project. Remember, have the discipline to do the analysis. Make sure you're buying properties that have 6, 7, 8% cap rates that are giving you decent returns. Never buy a property that doesn't cash flow. And remember, I'm Prof Bruce M Firestone. I'm a real estate investment coach, and I'm also a real estate broker at Century 21 Explorer, and you can always find me, bruce.firestone. I'll just write it in here, bruce.firestone at Century 21. Did I spell it right? Hopefully I did. Bruce.firestone. There you go. That's me. Thank you again for listening.